People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it and you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
Right from the first blow, Silvester Stallone has always put a lot of himself into his movies. He was a complete unknown when he made Rocky, a movie about a young man not unlike himself, from the tough side of town, a man with big ambitions and a chip on his shoulder.
Quite a while that not many very good A directors wanted to work with me because of the films I had done in the 80s, which were pretty much, you know, formula-type films. They said, you know, I don't think Stallone can act, or maybe he can act, but he doesn't do the kind of performance we want.
Never gave yourself a chance to act in a lot of them.
He got no after no after no after no. He said, I was thrown out more than 1,500 times in agents' offices in New York. I said, there aren't 1,500 agents in New York. He said, I know. I've been to them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. He said, remember one guy, I went in there, and I got in there at 4 o'clock, and he wouldn't see me, so I stayed there, and I would not leave. I stayed overnight. They came back the next morning. I was still sitting there. He said, that's how I got my first job. The guy said, fine, come in here. And he sat down, and he went through this, and he gave me my first movie. I said, oh, really? I thought Rocky was your first movie. He said, no, this other movie, I'd never heard of it. He said, I said, well, what character did you play? He said, well, I was in it for about 20 seconds. I was a thug that somebody beat up. He said, because they made me feel like, you know, people hate your guts. You getting beat up will be a good thing. And he did like 3 movies like that. Never got anything, kept going out, rejection, rejection, rejection. So finally he realized it wasn't working. So he changed his approach. He said, I was starving, by the way. He said, I couldn't pay for even to have heat in my apartment. My wife was screaming at me every day to go get a job. I said, well, why didn't you? He said, because I knew that if I got a job, he said, I'd get seduced back and I'd lose my hunger. He said, I knew that the only way I could do this is if it was the only choice, if I burned all other bridges. Because if I did a normal job, pretty soon I'd be caught up in that rhythm and that stuff, and I'd feel okay about my life, and I feel like my dream would just gradually disappear. He said, I wanted to keep that hunger. That hunger was the only thing I thought was my advantage. He said, my wife didn't understand that at all. He said, we'd have these vicious fights, and he said it was freezing. So I was broke, we had no money, and he said, so I finally went to the public library one day because it was warm. So I didn't want to read anything. Finally, he said, I kept going and going and going. He said, finally we were so broke. He said, I hawked my wife's jewelry. He said, Tony, there's some things in life you should never do. He said, that was basically the end of our relationship. She hated my guts so much. He said, now we were so broke, we had nothing, no food, no money. And he said, the one thing I loved most in the world was my dog. He said, I love my dog because he gave me unconditional love, unlike my wife. And he said, so what happened was, though, we were so broke that to survive, I couldn't even feed my dog. So I went to a liquor store. He said, it was the lowest day of my life. And I stood outside the liquor store trying to sell my dog to strangers. He said, I tried to sell my dog for $50. And he said that finally this one guy negotiated with me and bought my dog for me, my best friend on earth, for $25. He said, I walked away from there and I cried. He said, it was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. He said, 2 weeks later, I'm watching a fight between Muhammad Ali and Wepner, this white guy that's getting bludgeoned but just keeps on coming even though he gets the hell beat out of him. And he said, I got an idea. He said, as soon as the fight ended, I started writing. He said, I wrote for 20 straight hours. I did not sleep. I wrote the entire movie in 20 hours straight. Right then. Saw the fight, wrote the movie. Whole thing. Done. He said, I was shaking at the end. I was so excited. He said, I really knew, man. I knew what I wanted. I knew why I wanted it. He said, just like it's that formula. He said, but I said, man, I took the action. Now it's time to deliver. And so he said, I went out and started trying to sell it to agents. And they all would read it, and they'd say, you know, this is predictable. This is stupid. This is sappy. He said, I wrote down all the things they said, and I read them the night of the Oscars when we won. He said, it's really good, right? The greatest revenge is massive success. And he said, so what happened was, he said, I kept going, trying to sell it, nobody going, I'm broke, I'm starving. He said, finally, I meet these guys, they read it, and they believe in the script, and they love it. And they offer me $125,000 for my script. I said, oh my God, you must have been out of your mind. He said, I was. I said, just one thing though, guys, you got a deal based on one thing. And they said, what's that? He said, I got a star in it. They went, pfft. What are you talking about? You're a writer. He said, no, I'm an actor. He said, no, you're a writer. He said, no, I'm an actor. That is my story, and I'm Rocky. He said, I got to play it. You know, I got to be the head person. I got to be the starring role. And they said, there's no way. We're not going to pay you $125,000, take some no name and stick you in that and throw our money away. We need a star. They said, well, take it or leave it. He said, I left the room. I said, if that's what you believe, you don't get my script, and he left. Here's a man with no money, none, totally broke, offered $125,000 more money than he'd seen in his lifetime, and he walked away because... So he said they called him a few weeks later, and they came and brought him back, and they offered him $250,000 not to star in his own movie. He turned it down, $250,000. They came back, their final offer was $325,000. They wanted this thing. He said, not without me, and they said no. They finally compromised, and they gave him $35,000 and points in the movie, because they said, if this is going to happen, then you're going to take the risk with us. And the bottom line is, we don't think it'll work, but at least we won't spend a bunch of money on you. And they only spent $1 million to make Rocky, and it grossed $200 million at the time. I mean, it was done pretty well. But what's interesting about this is, I said, what'd you do? I mean, even $35,000, it's not $250,000. That's a lot of money when you don't have 25 bucks. I said, what's the first thing you did? I figured you went out and partied or something. He said, I went to that liquor store for 3 straight days and hoped that the man who had my dog frequented the store. He said, because I want to buy back my dog. About a month and a half by the time this had all come about. And he said, remember me? You know, I'm the guy that sold you the dog. I goes, yeah, I love the dog. He said, well, look. He said, I was so broke, I was starving. He's my best friend. I'm sure you love him too, but I got to have him back. Please, I beg of you. He said, I'll pay you $100 for the dog. I know you paid me $25, but I'll give you $100. The man said, absolutely not. No way. He's my dog now. You can't buy him back. He said, $1,000 for my dog. The guy said, no amount of money on earth is ever going to get this dog for you. I said, what'd it cost you? $15,000 and a part in Rocky. The guy's in Rocky.
I'm nervous about the fight.
You're scared to death.
You don't look scared?
Well, you ain't supposed to.
Then you don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, I think I do.
You know, living with you, it hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is going to be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
Well, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself, and this happens. Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only going to end up bad for you, and it's going to end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting you?
Yeah, in a way you are.
It's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm going to be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
You ain't gonna believe this. But you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
Just out in the music, the moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in